How old was he at the time?
I don't have an exact age. He's just listed as being in his 30s.
Yeah, well, still 30s, not teens.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it just 30s isn't the kind of immaturity that I was talking about. I'm talking about younger than that.
Right. Okay. So him probably not likely.
I don't think so. I mean, there's nothing that you've told me that tells me that he would be that person. Rude comment and 19 wounds on somebody's body are totally different things.
And then there was one other suspect there was no, again, witnesses of him doing anything, but he was a suspicious person reported by a couple of people. It was a Hispanic male, never gave his age. He was working full time. So obviously not a student. I got the impression that we're talking about an adult, at least, that did appear mentally unstable, that would ride his bike around the neighborhood on a regular basis. And he was seen that morning by one eyewitness riding his bike that morning. He was reported to the authorities by someone that lived up near Keough, who said that a day or two or a week after the murder had rode his bike to their house and was asking her kids if he could buy the pears off of her trees. He was described as being mentally unstable. He was questioned, but never followed up on.
All right, what time was he seen on the day of the murder?
There was a witness that saw him riding across the street in front of the school at 6:30 in the morning. And there was I think that was the only one that saw him that morning, was the 6:30 in the morning.
And so they said he was mentally off, but has he ever had an arrest record? Has he ever been arrested? Do you have his name? Has he ever been arrested before or since?
I do have his name, and I've looked him up, and I at least have not been able to find any criminal history for him.
Yeah. I mean, asking to buy pears rather than stealing pears, I mean, he's coherent enough to know that that's a better way to approach it than just coming up and stealing pears, right?
Right.
He's offering to pay for it. That sounds like a pretty coherent person. I mean, he may be off, but doesn't sound like he's that off. But I would say if he did this, that you would have seen evidence that there was some post-offense behavior and that he would have done something like this. You don't start stabbing people 20 times, 19 times. Your first violent ever attack.
Right. Honestly, my impression of reading the witness statements was these ladies just thought that he was weird. You know, he had never done anything bad to them. They thought he was weird, and they saw him around that morning.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and I think that's a good report, but I mean, I just don't see any indications of the kind of violence that we see in this case.
Right, and that's a really good point about him asking to buy the pears rather than just sneaking in and stealing them.
So, I have a question for you.
Okay.
There was apparently a trial, right?
There was?
Somebody was arrested, tried, and convicted for this?
Yes, there was.
Interesting.
I guess now I can explain to you a little more of what happened. The second individual that I mentioned to you, the 6'2" white guy that got out of prison, 3.5 years after the fact, there's a lot of family drama. It's a long story. You'll have to go back and listen to the first few episodes now to get it all. But his brother, who he lived with, and keep in mind there's a $10,000 reward floating around, tells police after months of being interrogated by a detective who's referred to as the master interrogator and master at getting reluctant witnesses to talk, told police that on the morning of the offense that him and his brother were out drinking till 3:00 in the morning. And at 7 in the morning, they woke up and decided to go for a jog. And they were going for a jog, and his brother came across Keough and out of nowhere just grabbed her, told him to get the F out of here, and he ran away. And then his brother came back 20 minutes later covered in blood. And he was the sole witness against Jesse's his name at his trial. Yeah, no physical evidence, no witnesses, nothing, just his testimony.
And he was convicted on that.
Yep, he was, and there's a little bit of more circumstance to that, but I haven't talked about it on the show yet, but tell you about it off the air.
Okay. Wow. So is that, what's his name?
His name is Jesse.
So is Jesse's apartment facing? Okay, so she's walking she would make, she would walk in front of Jesse's apartment.
Yes.
Okay. So does Jesse's apartment face the school or face away from the school?
It faces the school.
So is it on the first or second floor?
Second floor.
And how long has he lived there?
He'd lived there for about 5 months, 4.5 months.
Oh, not long. Okay. And he goes to jail because he's kind of got an anger issue, and he gets in a fight in the bar, and does he take somebody's knife and stab him, or does he have his own knife?
No, he took someone else's. The other person pulled the knife. He took it away from him and stabbed him.
Yeah, he seems pretty sure of himself.
Yeah, he definitely, even to this day, he's very sure of himself.
He seems like he would not have any problem at all controlling a 5 foot tall, 110-pound woman. He's dealt with men his own size or multiple men, right?
Right.
Same time.
Right.
One thing that worries me is that he's in an apartment that watches that track and probably saw her walking around every day. So if he had some sexual desires that were building up or frustrations, I would like to know, what relationships has he had? How long was he out? What has he done, since then? What were he was arrested how many years later?
3.5 years later.
3.5 years later for this crime. What did he do in between? What was his post-offense behavior? What happened during the days and weeks after this crime happened? Was he working? Did he leave town? His brother said he shows up with bloody clothes. His brother doesn't do anything about it, right?
Right. And his brother was actually questioned by the police. They both were, because they questioned everybody in the neighborhood, and both said they didn't know anything about it.
And now he says, yeah, Bob, I just, like I said, when you just posed him as a possibility, I don't at all. I had no idea you were talking about the guy that was arrested and convicted for this, obviously.
Yeah.
And I still have the same exact response. And even more so now that I know these other factors, that it's a very, very low probability. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
No sense at all.
Yeah. And to put it,
and he could have had her naked in 2 seconds and done whatever he wanted, if that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah. To put it mildly, Jesse was a big bad motherfucker back then, and, getting into fistfights with multiple grown men and kicking their ass. That just the whole thing just never made any sense. The other interesting thing is every offense Jesse's had, because he does have, an extensive criminal record, even for, going to the drunk tank for a night or two, getting in fights. He has never, ever had an offense against a woman or a child. And most of his fistfights were because someone was threatening or hurting a woman. So that really struck me as odd. Like, why would that guy all of a sudden decide to go kill an innocent woman? It just didn't make sense to me.
Not like he has long-standing ties to this community, and now this is an Asian invasion, and so he's striking out against them. There's nothing like that present. So I don't know. I'm struggling to find any kind of motivation in my head to why this guy would do something like this. And I do not believe that. I think that were it Jesse, the only crime scene would be the primary crime scene, and it would be very, it would be very easy to see that she was controlled immediately and she was dispatched, and that's that. Everything you've told me just cuts against him being this person. Behaviorally, I don't see any reason why he would have done this. And it's so inconsistent with what we see behaviorally at this scene. This crime was done by somebody or some people who did not have the physical strength or the mental acuity to control her. And so it was done by somebody who was mostly on the weak side, was not athletic, or was not a powerfully built person. This does not appear to be the crime of somebody who actually is physically powerful or physically assertive. And when you look at the circumstances, the multiple incidents that are contained within this crime, it's somebody or some people who started in one place ended up in another place, and somehow she got away in between. She was able to continue fighting till she eventually bled out. And it's just not somebody who could immediately control her. And I do think that with the information that I have now, I believe that the offender, again, was either somebody who was very immature, maybe in their teens, or had some mental defect that would give them the intellect and abilities of somebody who was in their teens. I guess there is one other possibility, that somebody who was fairly incapacitated by drugs or alcohol. But if somebody had gone out and gotten wasted and then got up and went out for a run, I would say that person was not incapacitated at that time. So I don't think it's that either.
Okay. Well, this has been an amazing analysis, and I'm extremely grateful that you came on and did this. I do want to talk to you for just a minute about some post-offense behavior for something that hasn't been covered on the show yet. So what I'm going to do is end this interview here, and for the listeners, this portion of what I'm going to talk to Jim about will get dropped in 2 weeks when we get into this post-offense behavior.
Okay, but let me say, also, I really appreciate you having me on, Bob, and I really, really love the fact that you are driven to try to right injustices wherever they are. And I really enjoy working with you. I think this has been a really interesting case to discuss with you, and I hope that we can continue to discuss it, because I'm sure you're going to find out more information. And as always, we evaluate based on the information we know, and things can change if more information comes in. So, looking forward to hearing more about this case. And the other thing is, my sympathies go out to Kiao's family and friends, because obviously this was a brutal murder, and just such a shame.
So there you have it. Jim is one of the most respected criminal behavior analysts in the field, and in his opinion, the most likely offender or offenders that killed Kiao Gove was someone, or possibly multiple someones, who are young and criminally inexperienced. A description that does not fit Jesse Eldridge. Jim's analysis of this crime scene has done one very important thing for us. It's given us a logical direction to investigate. At this point, I don't think Royster was that far off the mark when he spent so long believing that Judy Gonzalez and Jesse James Swindell might have actually witnessed the attack. But what I want to do next is to figure out what was so perplexing to Jim. What went so horribly wrong that Jesse Eldridge was convicted of this murder?
Hi, I'm looking for Carol Eldridge. My name is Bob. I'm an investigative journalist doing a story about her son, Jesse.
Yeah, and I was the one who testified against him because he lived with me at the time it happened.
Next week on Truth and Justice. Truth and Justice is a production of New Beginning Incorporated. Our executive producer is Mike Bussing. All music for this episode was created and scored by PutThemInASong.com. As always, I want to thank Tate Krupa for designing and creating our logo. I want to thank our transcription team, Sarah Hoyt, Sarah Mueller, and Desiree Dunn. And thank you to Chris Brinkley of SylviaConsultants.com for constructing and maintaining our new website. And I also want to throw out a very special thanks to Jim Clementi. Jim has an incredible amount of irons in the fire, and he is extremely busy. So I'd like to offer my sincere gratitude for Jim taking the time to not only break down this case for us and study all of the reports and the diagrams, but also for taking the time to come on the show today. To hear more from Jim, you can check out his podcast, Real Crime Profile, where he discusses cases with his co-hosts, Laura Richards and Lisa Zambetti. And also keep your eyes open for Jim's brand new podcast, Locked Up Abroad. I also want to thank each and every one of you. The support we've had in Season 3 has been incredible. People are reaching out and sharing information, and every day more and more people are coming forward with information about the people that are involved in this case. I strongly believe that it is that outreach that is finally going to give us